Hello, good evening, and welcome to the Majority Show, Scotland's #1 politics and chat show from an anti-nationalist perspective. My name is Mark Devlin, and we are going out tonight live on YouTube, Facebook, and on Twitter. I'm here tonight with my co-hosts, Mark Zegfeld and Mary Devlin. How are you both tonight?
Well, I'm doing great, thank you.
I'm good, thanks.
Great, good, glad to hear it. What are you going to be looking at tonight, Mary?
Well, tonight I'm going to be looking at who's gunning for John Swinney right from his first day in office.
Oh, right, okay. And Mark, what have you got for us?
I'm going to be looking at the drop in police numbers.
Drop in police numbers. Okay, and of course, we're all going to be looking at John Swinney, who possibly is the most boring man on earth. Let's all have a communal yawn about that. Anyway, we'll be back in a few minutes to talk about all that and much more.
And don't forget, we have Zimmer of the Week.
Oh, that's right, Zimmer of the Week. Okay, great, Mary. Glad you're keeping us on the right track. Okay, with you in a second. Right, welcome back to the Majority Show, Scotland's #1 politics chat. From an anti-nationalist perspective, our aim is a thriving Scotland without the toxic nationalism that is strangling Scotland's potential. Did I say that right? I maybe got something wrong there. Thriving Scotland. Anyway, as always, a huge thanks to our friends at UK Union Voice and United Against Separation Facebook pages, where many of you are watching from tonight.
And remember, sharing is caring. The #1 thing you can do is like this show on YouTube. Even if you don't subscribe, please drop a like. And if you can't subscribe, please do so. Increase our reach at the click of a button.
Right, and if you like the show and like what we're doing, please do go to the Majority shop and buy one of these amazing Majority Show T-shirts, which I have right here. I'm modelling. Look at that. It's fantastic, isn't it? You can see it really well in this particular frame. Anyway, we also have mouse mats and mugs at reasonable prices.
And as usual, I'll be managing the relentless flow of comments. So please keep them short and snappy, and we'll get as many up on screen as we can. Thank you.
Right, okay, so a big welcome back to Mark Zegfeld, who's taken a break because he wasn't very well. How are you feeling these days, Mark? You all feeling better?
Yeah, I'm getting a lot better, thanks. It was a bit of a shock when it happened, but thankfully it was just a warning.
Right.
I'm feeling a lot better, but I witnessed the state of the A&E department in Scotland, and it was quite an eye-opener.
Oh, really? Oh, how? I mean, just tell us a little bit more about that. That's what,
right. Well, I waited over 11 hours in A&E.
Wow.
And by the way, that was with a suspected heart attack, which happened to be they class it as a warning sign. It was a heart attack, but it was a small heart attack. There's no damage to my heart or valves or anything, so it was just a warning. But while I was in there, it was like a war zone.
Right.
There was a guy in there who'd fallen off a roof, 8 foot, and he'd been there. He had damage to his neck. He was in a brace, 3 broken ribs, and he was in A&E for, well, it was over 16 hours.
He'd been 16 hours.
Oh, in agony.
I left at 1:30 in the morning, and he was still there, and he'd been there for over 16 hours. And all he was waiting for was the okay from the specialist to tell him that they weren't going to operate and that he could go home. That's all he was waiting for, and he'd been waiting for 16 hours. And he wasn't the only one. It was full.
Right. Oh, that's terrible. It makes you wonder, though, if they could just deal with that backlog of one day, then surely everything would be back up to, dealing with people and as they come in. I don't really understand that.
I think if some of these politicians could just spend one day in an A&E in Scotland, they'd realise the issue, the problems, and what needs sorted, instead of blaming or saying we are doing better than England. If you just
Yes.
had one day in the A&E and just witness what was going on, they would they may then start realising we need to sort the problem instead of just comparing with the rest of the UK.
Right. Well, glad you're in the mend. Anyway, but since you've been back, it seems you've been doing your own YouTube channel, and that's going quite well.
Yes, it's not too bad, thanks. I've now been doing it for 2 months, and I've got just reaching 1,200 subscribers.
Very good.
Excellent.
So it's it's going really. I've got an interview with councillor who's been on this show. I think he was on the other
That's
week.
right.
Thomas Kurt. I'm interviewing him on Thursday tomorrow, so that should be quite interesting, because I always enjoyed talking to Thomas.
Thomas is great.
Yes, he was very good on the show here and got a very good response from the viewers.
We'll need to bring him on again soon.
Well, of course we will, indeed. Right, okay, very good. So on with the show. Anyway, says, we wish you all the best and healthy future. Now onto the show. Warning, Titanic metaphors ahead. Okay, anyway, but just to prove that we do actually do some work around here, we had 2 successes this week. First was I was contacted by the Sunday Times, who had seen my comment on the story that Andrew Marr had written about devolution failing, and they asked if it could be reprinted in the Sunday Times. An extract, this is the thing here. Down here we have... yes, we should abolish Holyrood. Scotland should not be in a position where extremists like Patrick Harvey, Lorna Slater and Ash Regan get to decide their future. The devolution experiment has left us with an onslaught of bad laws, divisive chancellors, globalist job seekers and extremist policies, all brought upon us by the well-meaning fools like Donald Dewar, Tony Blair and Gordon Brown, whose soft nationalism was the bedrock for the hard nationalism we see today. Mark, you have any thoughts on the failure of devolution?
Yeah, I think it was a bad idea from the very beginning, devolution, and I still think it's a bad idea. 25 years later in Scotland, it's been an absolute disaster. What we've seen in Holyrood is wasted mismanagement, wasted money. What we see in the committees are just an absolute joke. I think it's been an absolute disaster for the country. But I do think it's also been a disaster in the whole of England and Wales, where we're seeing these mayors popping up all over the place.
Right. Well, I'm a bit conflicted about that, because I think there is a distinction between, legislative devolution, where you have a parliament in each region, and then you have maybe, of course, an extra layer isn't that good, but the mayor is just one person. I suppose there's one person in an office as well, right? But they don't have the ability to make bad laws like what happens in the Scottish Parliament, do they?
Well, I think London, he has a lot more power in the mayor of London, because he looks after the police. And but I think it's the issue I have with it is when you get an opposition mayor, like London mayor is for instance Labour, and you have a Conservative government, they clash and they don't work together.
Yes.
And it's like the same with Scotland. We have a nationalist government in Scotland, and they don't work with Westminster. Now, devolution only works when they work together, and they work. If it was a Labour Labour government in Scotland and a Labour government in Westminster, I think you'd see devolution working a lot better than what it is. But I still think the old system of Westminster having the powers, giving the money to the local councils, because the local councils know what local people need.
Yes.
So give them the money from Westminster, let the local councils deal with the local issues. That worked perfectly.
And that's still a form of devolution anyway. So, that's the original devolution. That's the point, isn't it? So we already had a devolution that worked, and we replaced it with a devolution system that didn't work. And as I said, it gave a platform for divisive chancers, globalist job seekers, and extremist policies. And that's what we've seen. We've seen it played out over 25 years. It's coming up to the anniversary of devolution there. In other news, I was on Talk TV the other day, on talking also about Swinney and the fall, I suppose, of the SNP. What have we got here? Yes, with Alex Forbes. So let's have a look at a wee bit of that. I'm just going to do a random clip because I didn't have time to pull something out. Let's see what she's saying.
Even though I'm a huge proponent of PR,
because PR.
I have tacit interests with smaller parties. My history, of course, was working alongside the great Nigel Farage. But you do make a very important point there, which is you're right. The Green Party have been the ones very much tail wagging the dog up there in Scotland. And I get the impression some of the more radical policies that really disconcerted the Scottish public. A lot of the sort of trans stuff and the extreme net zero stuff rather came from them rather than the SNP.
Oh, now, yes, that's very true.
But John Swinney, though, he's supposed to be going in there to save this coalition. Do you think he's going to be able to put them back in their box?
No, I think the genie's out of the box, certainly. I think, or there is, I don't think there's any way that he has to bring them in, but keep them at arm's length, as it were, right? So if he can make an agreement with them, whereas they're not ministers, but they still do like a confidence and supply agreement, that type of thing, that's definitely seems to be on the cards. Because they need the Greens to have the feeling that they have a majority in the Parliament. If they don't have that, then there's chaos, and that's the kind of chaos that we've seen in the past few weeks with Humza Yousaf. Right, okay, well anyway, you can watch the rest of that on our YouTube channel. In fact, you can watch it on Talk TV's YouTube channel as well. Let's talk about the man himself. After hitting multiple icebergs, the SNP were proud to announce a new captain of the Titanic, the old captain of the Titanic, full speed ahead with the same old. When we took up the story last week...
Same crew.
Yes, same crew indeed. When we took up the story last week, Humza Yousaf had just been booted out, and Swinney had managed to defend against a possible challenge from Kate Forbes. Now, we're going to talk about Kate Forbes in a moment, but as the week progressed, it appeared that shadowy forces were in play. It was revealed that Humza Yousaf was desperate to get Reagan to prop up his leadership, but any attempt to bring Salmon's party into the fold was rebuffed by none other than Nicola Sturgeon. Sturgeon was also involved in calling Patrick Harvey to try and keep him on board the sinking ship. Is Sturgeon the puppet master? Is this so-called continuity government actually just a Swinney in name only government?
Yes, I will say yes. I believe she is still pulling the strings, but like I was saying, it's when you've been in politics a long time, you do start to recognise when a government is starting to fail and on the way down. 3 leaders within the last 14 months. There's a lot of talk that Swinney is only just here for the next 6 months, maybe a year, and then they might change again. So it is a lame duck government that is on the slide, and I think it's about time. I think if we keep pushing, we may get an early Holyrood election.
Well, we should have one anyway. I mean, it's 5 years between elections. It's ridiculous. Why?
That's too long.
It's
that's not democratic.
I think they put that in at COVID, right? So, and then they haven't changed it back. 5 years for a local assembly when there's local issues to deal with. Absolutely not on at all. It started off with an epic send-off, and now all that's left is Nicola Sturgeon on a door kicking Humza Yousaf and John Swinney off to fend for themselves in the icy water. She'll never let go.
Yeah, right.
Well, that's what it feels like, doesn't it? I'll never let go, Humza. But off you go. Anyway, Robin McAlpine, the Nationalist commentator, said it was Humza's special advisors who pulled the plug on him by announcing his resignation to the Times after the First Minister had gone to bed.
What? I haven't heard that.
Yeah. It was in
I don't
article.
know about this. Tell me.
Yeah, that's what apparently happened, which is true. It is an astonishing turn of events, or in Latin, et tu spads. As Hamza would say, if you did speak Latin. Anyway, they're really so desperate to keep Salmond out. What do you think about all this keeping Salmond out thing here?
Yeah, I think because I've thought for a long time that Salmond is still pushing the buttons from behind the scenes. He has, I think, he's manipulated people into doing his dirty work for him to bring the government down, or to bring at least Nicola Sturgeon down. And I do still think he has friends. We know he has friends within the SNP, and I think they've been doing his work for him from within the party. And I think we are seeing a huge civil war within the SNP being played out now.
Right.
And I think making Kate Forbes as the deputy minister is an attempt to try and keep your enemy close, keep your friends close, and keep your enemy closer. And I think that's part of what he's attempting to do now, because I think they're all over the place. They are absolutely all over the place, and I think it's just a final attempt to try and stabilize a dying party, because that's what they are.
Well, it's definitely true. But I mean, the thing is actually Kate Forbes, and we'll come on to her a bit more. Is it really bringing your enemy in? Isn't she just part of the thing anyway? Really, this idea that Kate Forbes is different from the rest of them somehow seems to be this kind of idea that's got some currency, that she's somehow, a better kind of nationalist, when in fact she's worse. Maybe Mary will talk a little bit about that as we go on. Nationalists are in disarray. Certainly, I've seen in that Robin McAlpine article, which I urge you to have a look at. He basically says he's been talking to people in the movement, and they're just fed up. They've had enough. Now they tried to put a new contender in. Can you remember that guy's name? I don't have my notes here.
Graham somebody.
Yeah, Graham somebody or other. I mean, that's the point. Graham somebody or other. And
was it McCormick?
No, was it? I don't know. Someone in the comments will tell us what it is. Anyway, and I could see some kind of lights going on in the Wings Over Scotland flag wavers and in the flag waving community. And they were like, oh, someone's actually going to talk about independence at last. And which seems to be quite absent from Swinney's talk to some extent. But he seemed to be bought off quite quickly, a bit like Forbes, really. I guess he was given an allowance to wave a flag on a Sunday and maybe a free subscription to the National.
Well, there was a lot of rumours, though, isn't there, that he was actually threatened.
Oh, really?
Being actually, yeah. Well, that's what
Graham McCormick.
That he was actually told to get back in your box and stay. Because the last thing they wanted is a leadership election, and I think Wings actually mentioned this, that he believes that he was the threats were made. The bully boys came out and put him back in his box. Whether that's true, I've no information on that, but that's what a lot of people have mentioned, and including Wings.
Right. Well, they said, I mean, from what I heard, that he was told that by Swinney that he would continue to focus on independence, and the guy somehow believed him, which is the amusing part. Anyway, I mean, what happened to the independence movement, Mark? Is it like a certain ship going down in the icy depths?
It's gone. It's the ship is halfway down, and it's going deeper and deeper. I think this started, in my opinion, when Sturgeon took the UK government to the Supreme Court. Independence died that day, and if you listen to Alex Salmond, he actually says the same. And I watched an interview with him, I think on YouTube, and the anger in his voice when he said, what bad politics, why would you take something to court you actually knew you were going to lose? You were going to lose.
Yeah, but I mean, it seems a bit. What's the word? I don't know the word. Not ironic, but because I mean, his side of the campaign, it was him, Ash Regan, wings that were pushing for this. This
What, to
idea.
go to the Supreme
Yeah,
Court, you mean?
yeah, they were pushing for, can we do this or not? That's what they were pushing for, and basically Sam would have done the same because it was the only option open to them at that time. I think so. It seems a bit like I don't know, ironic, as I say.
Well,
I think
it's hindsight.
Yes.
I think what Salmond was trying to say was, it ends the story. It cuts off any chance or any even discussion that Scotland can hold a referendum on their own. It ends that. If you don't take it to court, there's always the campaigning of,
Yes,
well,
kick the can down the road.
We can have a referendum, and you keep saying it and keep doing it until the point where you just they just hold a referendum. They can't do that now because they've been told legally there's no chance of holding a referendum. It's finished. It is Westminster's prerogative to hold.
Yeah, but I think they were really forced into it in the.
Well, Grumpy gets saying, she was damned if she did and damned if she didn't.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
They'd hit the end of the road.
Yeah, they hit the end of the road. They couldn't kick the can down the road any further, so they did that. In fact, they were able to kick it a wee bit further down by complaining or saying that there was going to be a de facto referendum, and that was still one of the things that was going on. In fact, this guy Graham McCormick was a proponent of that. He basically said that if they had got a majority in this upcoming general election, that they would declare UDI. They would withdraw all their MPs from Westminster, set up a Scottish Parliament, and whatever. Something like that, unicorns. I don't know, because it had just been shut down straight away, by the UK government. Anyway, perhaps something like that might have worked if there was a lot of public. The public were really on their side, but as we've seen lately, the independence movement seems to be being reduced back to the nutters and Anglophobes and greedy people. It's our oil that it used to be. So the lights are flickering, the back is broken. Jack and Rose are heading for the stern. Anyway.
I hope everyone's seen Titanic, by the way. This doesn't mean anything.
Yes, well, anyway, everyone's seen that, of course.
Yeah.
Right, we'll take a short break and we will talk about rearranging
the deck.
the deck chairs on a famous sinking ship. We'll be back in a second. Right, well, glad you're back with us. Sorry about technical issues earlier. We have been beset with issues since we got into our new house, including not being able to get our backdrop right and all kinds of nonsense, sound issues, what have you. But we persist and we hope that you will enjoy what we can bring to you anyway. Now, today's news. Captain of the Titanic decided that the deck chairs didn't need to be rearranged at all, except for adding a new one that is not green. Leans to the right and easily folds. So, Kate Forbes, talk about Kate Forbes here. What is this? Was this a quid pro quo, Mark, for not running against?
Yeah, I think it's. I think it's a. Here's a fat pension as the deputy first minister. You can. As far as I know, there's no portfolio with it. There's no other ministerial position with it. As far as I know so far.
Well, there's this thing about the Minister for Gaelic or Gaelic, whatever you want to call it. I mean, how does that work? What's that all about?
I think she would have insisted on that. But I think that's her doing.
Of course, I mean, to give her some kind of thing in her own community, perhaps. But we're talking about, it was quite bizarre because I saw, just before we came on, I saw a video of Swinney and Kate looking a bit like, they're outside Butte House, looking a bit like Annie and Daddy Warbucks. And they were kind of, he was saying, our main priority is to stop child poverty. And I'm like, well, why isn't Kate the Minister for Child Poverty then? In fact, she's a Minister for Gaelic or Gaelic, whatever you want to call it. Now, when I was young, it was Gaelic. And when I came back to Scotland, it was Gaelic. So there's a confusion. I don't know. Apparently, it's okay either way. You can tell me in the comments if I'm making an incredible faux pas against the Gaelic or Gaelic speakers. Anyway, but why is it, it's like 1%, less than 1% of the population speaks Gaelic. They seem to be forcing the issue on us politically to try and make us feel more Scottishy, or to try and make us feel bad for not being Scottishy enough. And we're not. That's not the thing. I've got nothing against people who speak Gaelic. Of course not. More power to them. I'm quite happy to see the language promoted in the areas where they speak it. But to try and say that the people in Scotland know any Gaelic or Gaelic, it's just nonsense. It feels very forced. Do you feel that, Mark?
Yeah, definitely. It's a language that's died out yonks ago. There's hardly anybody speaks it. It's very rarely. I don't know anybody who
Well, there's
speaks.
a small percentage of people speak it,
1%,
but
isn't it?
very small. But there's a lot more French speakers in Scotland. In fact, obviously a lot more Polish speakers and Urdu speakers in Scotland than there are Gaelic speakers.
It's like Minister for Scottishy stuff.
We
That's the
all
kind of
over
feeling of it. Anyway, Mary, you've got a few things to say about Kate Forbes, I think.
I do. I've got a lot to say about Kate Forbes, but I'll try and keep it succinct. Well, basically, my beef with Kate Forbes and all the people who think that she's great, they say, oh, she's honest, she's competent, oh, she's a good Christian. And this includes people on our side. My beef is that Kate Forbes she has the basic skills and competence and experience, unlike, say, Shona Robinson,
Yes.
who I don't think would know if a set of accounts was the right way up. Never mind understand what they actually said. But, Kate Forbes at least knows enough to know that independence would cause untold financial hardship and misery on the people of Scotland for many, many years. We're not just talking about, a couple of years. And that would be at least. And yet she participates in the cover-up, which I call the great lie, that an independent Scotland will be financially viable and thriving even, they say. So she is a person who's willing to let families suffer, pensioners suffer, children suffer, all for the fantasy of independence, which she knows will cause this suffering. So, that's dishonest at best, and it's certainly not very Christian.
Well, it's one thing to know something's not know something's a lie and promote it. That's just stupidity or blind cult-like behaviour,
ignorance,
which we talk about quite a lot. But as you say, it's another thing to actually know what's going on. And of course, we know that all the leaders of the SNP know what's going on. They know they can't get independence. They know they don't have enough support. They were lucky enough to build support in 2014 for a short moment, and they still think they have it. They don't. They keep persist with the lie, for example, 50%. Independence support. Yet the only vehicle to get independence is the SNP, which is way down now. We're going to lose 29 seats at the next general election. So it seems seems that they are mendacious. Is that the right word, Mary?
Well, it's one of the words that I would use. It's deliberate. They're deliberately lying to people. They know that they're cheating people by proffering this fantasy that they have, about independence. And I don't know how they think that's going to work out. Do they understand clearly that it's never going to happen as well?
No, I think it's the vehicle. Right, it's the vehicle
that gives them power,
as it were. Right, it could be anything actually, and in fact, they do grab onto anything. They'll say, "What can give us and maintain our power? What can give us power and maintain it?" That's why they'll latch on to these protest movements so readily. Anti-Brexit, we can gain some power from that because we don't have enough power in our own core.
Or even Palestine,
right? Palestine's another one. The trans issue is another one as well, and all these seem to be global issues. As well.
And someone's, Sandra's saying here she was finance minister and was part of the fiscal malfeasance and corruption cover-up. I could go on about Kate Forbes and all the things that she has been a big part of.
Yes.
And people are kind of, at the moment, people talk about her, as you said earlier, as if she was something separate from all of this. She was in there. She was in the mix. She was a big part of it.
Yeah, she was Sturgeon's finance minister for a start, and someone mentioned it. She's part of the cover-up. No, maybe not the cover-up exactly, but she's a participant in the whole thing. In any case, but it's quite interesting. She's not the main player at the moment. Mark, do you have any thoughts on how you said Swinney might just be here for 6 months, and then
I think. Maybe my feeling is Flynn is being put into is going to lose his seat in Westminster. It's a big possibility that he'll lose his seat in Westminster. I think he'll come down to Scotland. He'll find a safe seat. I think they'll get him in somewhere.
On the list, of course. Easy in the list.
Yeah, and then coming on the list, and then in a year or so, or maybe even after the next Holyrood elections, Flynn will be the party leader. Hopefully, he won't be the First Minister, because hopefully they'll be out of government by then. It could be as soon as 6 months to a year. I think you might see Swinney stepping aside with his big fat pension, and possibly Flynn taking over as the next.
Yes, you don't think Kate will take over, no?
No, I don't think she'll ever get the votes from the party. I think she splits the party. And a lot of the younger generation don't like Kate Forbes. Don't like her.
She's not woke enough.
No.
Yes, well, I mean, that's definitely true. And of course, the number one people who don't like the Kate are the Greens. Patrick Harvey was running around like an angry garden gnome, gnashing his chops. That Forbes got in a tweet. He basically said, "No right turn." Or is that what it is? Where have we got this thing here? Let's see if it's down there. No right turn. Can't get the original because I'm blocked on Twitter. Anyway, so he's saying there will be many people across our country who will be very concerned and who will want to know that this Scottish Government remains committed to a greener and more equal future for Scotland. I did notice in that they emphasise the greenery rather than the social issues in that statement. So basically, blandness about equality, not anything about gay rights or something like that, or sex before marriage, which would be more pointed. So perhaps they're like, oh, well, okay, we'll put up with this. I mean, do you think that's the case, Mark?
No, I think there's going to be. I think putting her in that position as Deputy First Minister, I think it's going to cause Swinney a lot of issues in Parliament getting his policies through. I think the Greens may well start voting against the government, not even abstaining. I think they could, right, because they are absolutely. They believe Swinney is going to take the government more to the centre rather than the left that they've been going.
Yes, well, far left, I think.
The far left. So I think the battle cry was when they abstained in the voting of the First Minister. I think that was a message to Swinney of you don't have our vote. You're going to have to show us that you're going to keep going on the same path as what Humza was going on, and if you don't, we will vote against you. I think that was the battle cry from the Greens, from Harvey, and the rest of them. So I do think it's going to be interesting. I do think Swinney's he's all over the place. If you look, his first couple of days have been quite poor because he's all over the place. He's trying to appease everybody. He's looking to the opposition saying, "I'll work with you." He's looking to the Greens to say, "We'll carry on."
Yes, the big uniter. Let's park that for a second. We'll have a wee break, and we'll come back and we'll discuss that a little bit more. If I can ever find the thing, okay. Right, okay. That break should really be a little bit longer. We can take more than one single breath. But anyway, we're glad to have you back with us on the show here. I see many people come back in again. Thank you all for taking the effort to go and find out wherever it is being streamed to. It's sometimes we do have these technical issues. Anyway, it does take a lot of effort to put this show together. And we have had about a good run. We had about a year there of very few technical errors. And thanks to many of you for donating to help improve the sound and improve the quality of the show. But we do need to continue to need your donations for the show and for upkeep and so on, and just for all the work that we do. So I'd like to ask you, if you can afford it, please do make a monthly donation to us. It doesn't need to be big. It can be £2, I think, is the minimum. But every donation, big or small, is most appreciated for us keeping the show running. You can go to our website, which has a wee button on every page. It says donate. Or you can give us a super thanks or super sticker on YouTube, which is really great. And if we do happen to see those flying by, then we will give you a shout out if we can. Right. Okay. What have we got then? We talked. We were going on there about Swinney being conflicted. This was a big thing here. We saw him trying to reach this ridiculous thing here. I've got the thing here. I will work with unionists if they park independence opposition. I mean, it's just insanity. It's like I'll work with you if you do exactly what I want you to do.
If you do the opposite of what you've been set up to do.
I mean, it's crazy. It's so arrogant as well. And also, he had this other thing that he said, which was along the same idea, which was let me try and think about it because I can't find it in notes. It was the idea that I'm the first minister for the people who want independence and those who are still to be converted. You're like, wait a minute. That's not the right way to define it at all. Just say I'm the first minister for everyone, and whether they support independence or not, fair enough. Whatever. I mean, that would seem reasonable, but it does seem to be does have a touch of arrogance, doesn't he, Mark?
Yeah, I think he has been. I think he is an arrogant man, but it's interesting. He never actually said that in his speech. He never said, "I'm going to work with the opposition as long as they park independence." What he said was, "I've always worked with the opposition," and he praised the Tories and said, "I've worked with them in the past to get policies through, and it's always been, a good working relationship. I've worked with Labour, and thanks to Labour, devolution got off the ground." He mentioned all this in his speech.
Right.
And then as soon as he got out to the press, he turns around and says, "Well, yeah, I'll work with the opposition as long as they do basically what I want them to do." He believes that he can, that he has the power and they are coming from a strong position to demand this. Now, maybe that was in Sturgeon's times, she could do that. But in these times, with a minority government, he doesn't have the same power, and he doesn't have the same. He's not coming from a strong position. He's coming.
No, he doesn't have the personality for it either, really, does he? I mean, he's not like, you don't feel that he's a uniter. You feel that you see him in the chamber, clapping heartily to everything that Nicola Sturgeon has said, and you get the real feeling that he's a real insider. He knows where all the bodies are buried. He's calculating, cold. That's my feelings anyway. I don't know if the audience feels perhaps different from that. Maybe they know him from longer. But it doesn't feel like a uniter. I mean, they come out with this ridiculous this thing, uniting for independence. You're like, well, wait, what? It's like from 1984. As freedom is slavery and war is peace and all that type of nonsense. You're like, come on, uniting for independence, please. I mean, give us a break from that. Mary, you've got some thoughts on, but the other things are coming down the pipeline at him.
Yeah, so I was just looking at what were the reactions to John Swinney becoming the first minister. And obviously it's his first day on the job today. And already Labour and the Conservatives are accusing John Swinney of continuing the SNP government's habits of secretive cover-ups and fiscal ineptitude.
Right.
It kind of sums them up. They're basically saying that he's burying bad news because he and Shona Robinson have already paused the publication of their tax and fiscal strategies. So the publication would have included the economic forecasts, which would have told us, which would have proven about Humza Yousaf's when he hiked up the income tax again, whether that was working or not.
Not working,
now,
most likely.
Okay, so we and everyone else who understands basic economics know that higher taxes in Scotland cause the middle class and the richer taxpayers to basically flee for the border and run over to lower taxed England. People like doctors or dentists, executives. I saw a list today that said cops and business owners. I didn't know cops were so highly paid, but anyway, and business owners. So the Scottish Tory Shadow Finance Secretary Liz Smith, she said John Swinney has barely got his feet under the table and he's already blocking scrutiny of the SNP's damaging taxation policy. There's an ever-widening tax gap between Scotland and the rest of the UK, and key workers are not coming to Scotland, or they're not staying in Scotland.
It's nothing new for him to be hiding things. That's the other thing, right? We saw him, he's still not given up the legal advice that the Scottish Government got on the salmon case, as far as I know. It went to a vote of no confidence. He won that. And it's still going through it went to the courts, I think, as well, not that long ago.
He's been ordered twice
to release the information. To release this information, not release the information. As I said, he's the kind of guy quite happy to, brush stuff under the carpet.
You remember when he was the education secretary during COVID, and they wouldn't release the OECD reports to say how Scottish schools were doing in the international league tables.
Right.
They refused to release them before the elections, the last Scottish elections in 2021. After the elections, they released them, and of course they were full of bad news. So we have to assume that these reckonings, as far as Humza's tax hikes, that can't be going very well for them. Otherwise, of course, they'd be rushing out to publish.
Yeah, I think so.
So it must be proving then that the tax hikes have caused workers to flee.
Uh-huh.
Now, what I've also saw going on already, people coming for him, are Scottish house builders.
Right.
So we're expecting them to put pressure on the First Minister to act on housing, because we've got the collapse of the Butte House Agreement and Humza's resigned. He basically did whatever the Greens wanted. So house builders are hoping that John Swinney will make changes to the upcoming Housing Scotland bill. So that's a bill that's going through at the moment. It's got all the crazy green stuff on there. The Scottish house builders have basically warned that the bill risks serious unintended consequences, just what we've always been talking about every week on the show. Concerns that investors are going to walk away from funding homes in Scotland. The rent controls of 2022 by Humza and the Greens have resulted in investment in new homes. All the investment in new homes has been diverted to other parts of the UK, while rents in Scotland are spiralling basically out of control. Mm-hmm. And the people in the build to rent market in Scotland, they've basically closed up shop.
Yeah, they have.
They want more clarity around what this homes law is going to be. So the house building market has virtually drawn to a standstill in Scotland.
Mm-hmm. And that's what you need. I mean, there's a housing crisis because of that.
Yes.
Right? So,
and it's getting worse.
And I hear that Salmond has raised his head again. What's this story here?
Yeah, so Alex Salmond has warned John Swinney that he could pay the heaviest of political prices.
Oh, for God's sake.
It's about the roads.
For the dramatic, hasn't it?
You know, the key road building projects, such as completing the dualling of the A9. They've been put on hold to appease the Scottish Greens. So Alex Salmond is saying if John Swinney doesn't get that moving, then he's going to pay the price.
I think that's...
So, I mean, he's only been in office for a day, and this is what's going on already.
I think Salmond would have taken the Greens on as well. I mean, it's like there's no option for a lot of these. I mean, there are options in politics, but when your one goal is to try and get a majority, to try and force through a referendum bill, to try and get independence, then you have to do what you have to do that. And I don't see how Alex Salmond would have done anything different to try and do that in the situation he was in. Nicola Sturgeon, he would have made a deal with the Greens if it got him further or not. I just can't see them being that different. Of course, now they say, "Oh, of course, Salmond, I'd never work without them," because that's in a way you can see he can get power now in his position. But it's cynical, I think, to some extent. This thing about the roads is cynical as well. I mean, he was the first minister when as well. He could have done the A9 20 years ago or whatever it was. It's ridiculous. Mark, any thoughts on some of my points there?
Yeah, I think the issue with the Greens was Sturgeon thought she could control the Greens and they'll be just popping up everything that she wanted to get through, but it ended up because she left and we got a weak First Minister, it ended up the Greens controlling the SNP.
Mhm.
All their policies were being pushed forward, and all the SNP policies were binned. So we got a green, basically we got a green government. The
Yes.
Greens
Well, I
running.
think
Yeah.
I suppose Sturgeon was for that. I mean, it seemed to me that she saw some debate that she had, the different leaders, and it looked to me that she would rather have. I've said this before. She would rather have Patrick Harvey as her deputy than any of the people in her own party, including Craig Forbes, of course, because it suited what she liked, I suppose. Perhaps Salmon might not have gone quite that far, I think, but needs must. And this is the problem with this type of politics when they have a single goal. Now, most political parties don't have a single goal. They have a thing. They say, we want to improve the country's health, or we want to improve the education.
Well,
and
they're
so on.
usually focused on services.
Yeah, it's focused in services, so they can they can try and divide their attention between those. But this is not what we see here. Everything has to be focused on this one topic that most people, I think, in Scotland are beginning to tire of now, and it's a dwindling minority that are still waving the flags. And
I think the issue they have, I think the big issue they have, the SNP now, is people are coming around to the idea that we are not getting independence. They are not. They're not. The SNP will not get them independence. So then they turn around and think, well, what are the SNP doing then? If they're not going to get us independence, they start looking at the state of the country, and they think, well, if they're not going to get us independence, then at least run the country properly. And then they're looking and thinking, well, they're not even doing that. They can't do that. So why are we voting for the SNP? And the number of SNP people that come into Twitter spaces and come forward to speak and say, I've been an SNP member all my life, but I've left and I'm not voting SNP. The number of people that come forward is quite amazing, and that's why I think, and I think they see the numbers now. This is why they didn't want a leadership election, because they would have to show everybody the numbers of SNP members that they've got.
Yes.
They'd have to tell everybody, and I think they don't want that because it's dwindling. It's going smaller and smaller and smaller.
Yeah.
And I think
well, I said it before, I don't know if it was last week on the show or maybe on Twitter or something, you don't become a nationalist to do good governance. What you do is the opposite of that. You get in there to say to people, I've got this goal in the future. This is what we're going to do in the future. And these other people are to blame for your problems right now. So it's all the distraction away from your own abilities, right? Whether you're a grifter, groper, no hoper, all that type of stuff, right? So as long as you can distract people, then it doesn't matter. Then people get into nationalism because of that. I think as politicians, they want to. They're not interested really at all in the governance. So when the goal is gone, then there is no governance.
no.
Right? The people were never interested in that. They were always saying something was over here, the great future's over here. But there is no great future over there anymore. So what did you actually do for us while we're waiting? And I think the key thing here is that the people who voted for them have to realise that it was them that put them in place. They believed the dream. And the dream was the thing that caused the bad governance. Right? The nationalism itself caused the problems that they now see. But they don't say that because I think a lot of these people would still go back if someone came along, a charismatic leader came along and said, well, we can actually get independence. They would go back.
And I think
the same thing would happen again.
And that's why they keep changing the leader now, because they're looking for that one person that can attract
that's a good point.
the members back. And it was like, well, now Sturgeon's got, well, Humsey will do it. And they saw, well, Humsey's not done it. He hasn't attracted the members back. We'll get Swinney. He will.
I actually think Swinney could be the one who could bring people back.
And that's the position they're in. So if Swinney can't do it within a year, it'll be, well, we'll have to get Flynn in because maybe he can do it. And it's desperate.
They're clutching at straws.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, they've got a doctorate in straw clutching, certainly. To quote a famous movie about a ship that sinks, the ship will certainly sink. It is made of iron. It is going down. Anyway, next up, we'll leave Swinney behind. We'll see how he gets on in the next few months. Can you imagine a stunning turnaround? The media's not with him for a start. People, I don't think, are really with him. And once the calamities start piling up, we'll see how well he is able to manage the decline. Of course, at the same time, Labour is resurgent. So we'll see the media switching its allegiance very clearly, saying, oh, well, this is a dead party with a dead end. We'll go with the winners, as they always do. So anyway, Mark will be up in a second. I'm going to talk about policing. So we'll see you in a moment when I get back to my wee screen. Right, Mark, what have you got to say?
The new reports come out about the numbers of frontline police, full-time police officers that we've got in Scotland, and it's quite shocking news that's come out. We've got, I'll read the numbers out. We've got 16,356 full-time equivalent officers, and that's up to the end of March. That was the numbers up to end of March. It's the lowest drop in police officers we've had for 15 years. They've gone back 15 years.
Right.
The lowest drop. We lost last year 260 officers in just last year that left. That is one officer leaving every single working day for 12 months. It's the lowest levels since 2008, and that is according to Scottish Government's own data. It's the lowest since September 2008. Now, the cuts, the reasons why is because the cuts to the police budget has caused a lot of hardship within the police service. Police officers are either leaving or retiring early, and that is due to working conditions. Now, a lot of the issues we have, because the numbers are so low, is obviously the hate crime. We have, they're overstretched. They're overstretching the police because of the hate crime. We had a promise in the last election from the SNP that they would put 1,000 officers extra into the police force, 1,000 extra. But that's again a broken promise, because what we've seen is a lower numbers going back.
They used to have over 17,000. I believe that's what the comment here, I think, was about, the 17,234.
Yes.
I think we've lost over 1,000, right, in the last year or two.
Yeah,
last few years.
I mean, who would want to be a police now anyway? I mean, you've got to deal with politics. I mean, so much political interference. I mean, hate crime laws are basically political laws, right? So, I mean, who wants to be involved in that? It may mean that you're. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think police are ordinary people as well, so they don't want to be. They don't want to be in situations where you're prosecuting crimes that don't really feel like crimes to them. That would be my feeling.
Well, like the 74-year-old woman who was arrested.
Oh yes, that's right.
On the hate crime, and she was taken down the police station, and they said if she didn't go, they would put handcuffs on her.
They seem to be quite happy to do that, I have to say. But I mean, if you've got
crime as well, I think the situation with this under 25s not having the brain developed properly, getting lighter sentences. So when you sit, it must be disheartening when you arrest somebody and they're back out on the street within a couple of weeks.
Yeah, with Nicola Sturgeon. That's the thing. You look at that, going, what is going on here? Do we expect more arrests, or not arrests? We expect more charges in the case of Nicola Sturgeon. Well, certainly the people in our majority group definitely think that's coming down the pipe.
Well, we think that they have to come. That has to.
Yes.
because their signatures on all the accounts.
Yes, that's right. I mean, otherwise it would
But
be,
we can't really speculate, so.
well, you can speculate because she's not actually technically under arrest anymore, apparently.
Oh,
It?
okay.
So you can speculate, but you can't speculate in her guilt or innocence. You can speculate whether someone's going to be charged or not. I don't think it really matters there. Now, some might say Nicola Sturgeon's brain isn't all that developed either, but let's leave that to another. Let's leave that to another day.
25.
Do you think that this, Mark? Do you think that? I mean, what would attract more people into the police?
To be honest with you, I don't think they can attract. That's part of the issue. The leaving rather than being getting them attracted, and it comes again down to what we were talking before about the tax issues. They can't attract people from outside of Scotland into Scotland, because why would you come down to Scotland and pay more?
Mm-hmm.
And I've basically a lesser pay packet, and I think the political interference within the police force. I think I do know. I have spoken to a few police officers, some quite high up in the police in Scotland, and they've told me that they are pig sick of the political interference from the Scottish government.
Right.
I think also when they're trying to do their jobs, I think that now they're just monitored so much.
Yes.
They used to be able to just, they could go out and they could see what was happening. If there's any trouble, just arrest people and, get on with the process of charging them or whatever. But now they've got all their, body cams, and people have got phones, and even the slightest little, thing from the police, and then, something serious is going to happen against them. So
yes.
I think a lot of them feel as if they can't do their jobs properly.
Well, it'd be interesting if we could get up someone who is a police or ex-police to come and talk to us on the show and tell us what the story is. So let's aim for that. Anyway, all right. Thank you for that, Mark. Very good. Things you can do right now to support the show. You can make a donation to the Majority's 2024 fundraiser, or you can leave a super thanks or super sticker. That'd be really great. We are going to try and ramp up our donations in the next few weeks.
I was especially looking for anyone who it's possible for them to make a monthly donation. The monthly donations really, really help.
And part of the reason that is that we are ramping up for upcoming general election, which we don't know was coming. Well, we know it's going to come soon. So hopefully sooner than later. So we need to get our finances in order for that. Of course, you can always buy a T-shirt.
Or war chest.
War chest. Well, here's the chest. Well, it's not war chest, but this chest here, you can put on your own chest, you can put a fantastic Majority T-shirt. And we have a bunch of other designs in there as well, including the famous They Can Take Our Lives, but they will not take our camper vans T-shirt. And what else can we do? You can subscribe to the show on YouTube, and you can tell your friends about us, or you can do all of the above, which makes us feel really loved. Underlined and exclamation point. Coming up, it's the moment you've all been waiting for. It's the highlight of the week. It is Zimmer of the Week.
Yay.
Right, okay, here we go. Right, so how do you tell if Neil Mackay, the Herald journalist, is not a nationalist? Because he'll tell you every time. Mr. I'm Not Nationalist Mackay was in good form this week, trying to prove once again that he was not a nationalist by writing an article entitled Hatred of the SNP and the Left has reached absurd new levels. Well, this seems like an absurd content on the face of it, I think. Anyway, he took offence to a cartoon that many of you may have seen. There is there showing SNP leaders caught in the noose. Some have said this is an incitement to violence, but most other people see it for what it is, which is the reality that SNP leaders are caught in a noose and being strangled by their own party and by their own nationalism. I think Mr. I'm Not a Nationalist, though, extrapolated that into some kind of widespread hate against the SNP, seemingly forgetting that Nicola Sturgeon said that she detested Tories. Remember that one?
She hated them, no?
Yes. Oh, yeah. Detest, I think.
Was it?
Or hate. Well, does it make much difference?
Okay.
Really? Well, an army of cybernats routinely abuse anyone who dares speak out, calling them traitors, house jocks. Go back to England. And I had just the other day, in fact, it was this morning, are you even Scottish? Which, like, okay, that's not very nice. Talking of cybernats, Mr. I'm Not a Nationalist cites one Janie Godley as someone who's come under attack. Now, as a victim of Miss Godley's pile-ons, which was a low point in my time at the majority, I have to beg to differ. And putting aside her previous racist, ableist, and anti-gypsy comments, which were done apparently in the name of her comedy, Godley is currently, right now, a vile internet troll who gains sympathy from her followers by claiming to be the victim of the attacks that she instigates. She evades blocks on Twitter and claims people are writing bad things about her to gain sympathy from her followers, and then pile on those followers on 300,000 followers onto people who basically have no tiny accounts. And some of the accounts, we see them day by day. I'm actually laughing at her for doing this. And then she has she hides behind her terminal cancer diagnosis whenever anyone brings this up. Now, despite all this, I hope that Miss Godley can find some comfort in her final years. And but I might suggest that if she wants to spend those years in a more fruitful way, rather than fighting with random people on the internet, she might want to spend the time, more productively with her family, or even with her comedy, or even with her own followers, perhaps. But she's indicative of what the SNP does as well. It proposes it claims to be the victim of colonialism, oppression, all this type of nonsense. And when you fight back against it, you get called a traitor. Now, we're tired. I think I'm just tired of all this type of division. I think one of the big things that people will do, and I think it really will do, is they'll have a sense of relief once this is gone. And they'll say, okay, I can disagree with my friends about the health service or education or emptying the bins, but I'm not going to fall out with them. I'm not going to call them a traitor. I'm not going to think they're a traitor. I'm not going to not bring up the topic with some people because you don't want to get into some kind of constitutional fight. And that's just, how did we ever become that type of country? Can we not just let that go at last? So this idea that the SNP is somehow being hated for some unknown reason is is absurd on its face. I think basically they brought division to Scotland, they fostered it, they've pushed it amongst everyone, and it's time for it to stop. And at least if you do it, if you have been doing it, try at least own your part in it. And I'm not a nationalist. And these other people like Jerry Hassan, who's also not a nationalist, who claims not to be a nationalist, they did promote it. They voted for the SNP and they did all that. And now they're trying to say, poor us, we're the victims. I don't think so. I really don't think so. So for continuing to defend toxic nationalism, even in its death throes, my Zimmer is Mr. I'm Not a Nationalist, Neil Mackay.
Well, that was a very impassioned Zimmer there, Mark.
I got caught up in it when I was along there. I went off script. I'm quite happy to.
You ad-libbed.
Well, it's just it's so tiresome. It's like you meet someone new, you meet someone, you say, well, what you don't even have the discussion in many cases with them about, well, what politics do you support? Because it just got kind of worms.
Toxic.
It's too toxic. Well, how did we ever get to that situation? We never needed to get to that. And it was because of people like Sturgeon and Swinney and Forbes and all of them, and all this media that supported them, all these people. So it's just... Anyway, yes, maybe I should have a cup of Earl Grey or chamomile.
Chamomile,
some Valium. I think may help. Anyway, all right. Anyway, that's my Zimmer of the week. All right.
Good performance.
Okay. Right, thank you, Mary. There's good. Okay, next up is going to be Mark, isn't it?
It's good to talk, Mark.
Thank you. It's therapy. I'm just getting out. That's what I'm trying to do. All right. Anyway, Mark's up with his Zimmer.
Right. Mine is the gift that keeps on giving, and it's a woman we all know very well.
God love her.
God love her, Emma Harper, the woman that says we don't need currency anymore. We've got plastic. We just use everybody uses plastic.
Plastic, yeah.
Yes, classic.
The one who stands up in Parliament and speaks Scottish language, and it's just it's embarrassing.
It's painful.
She's been at it again. She's been in the committee for Dr. Hilary Cass, questioning Dr. Hilary Cass, and she completely embarrassed herself. She rambled on for a good 5-10 minutes. Nobody knew what the question was. Even Dr. Hilary Cass said, I don't understand what the question, what is your question? She mentioned, what was it? She mentioned dubious science at least 7 times, but she didn't use it in the right. And someone direct messaged me this. If you read the report, it says there's dubious science, but if you turn the page over, it explains what she means by dubious science.
Yes, okay.
Well, Emma Harper, bless her, she's read the first page and she hasn't read the rest of the report, and she's got down to dubious science, and then she's used that to try and make out the report was dubious science.
Yes.
And she waffled so much and then never asked the question that Ash Reagan was cut off and halfway through her question and told, your time's up, that's it, we're finished. The Conservative deputy head wasn't even allowed to ask a question because she was asked. She said, why can't I ask? And the chair said, well, we've run out of time. But Emma Harper was allowed to go on and on and on. Well, I think it's all over Twitter, and it's been plastered all over. And the remarks from even politicians laughing at Emma Harper, they must think the SNP hierarchy must, every time she goes to do something in committee or Parliament, whenever she speaks, they must think, oh my God, what's she going to do now? Because she is a total embarrassment.
Yes.
You know,
I wonder why they haven't asked her to keep quiet. I mean,
Well,
like,
they can't,
Emma,
because
don't say
she
anything.
has to be. They probably have to fulfil certain committee positions and stuff like that.
I would think they would just put her in a cupboard and lock the door and say,
Oh, dear.
come out. Because,
Right.
you know, it's embarrassing for Scotland to have somebody so inept. So
I watched her performance, and I didn't even know it was about a question. I didn't even know it was supposed to be a question.
Yeah, I saw the other.
I didn't know what it was.
Yeah, I saw the other thing where she was talking about the red meat on the cows and the global warming thing. Did you see that? That was the other day as well.
Oh.
You're just like, and she's like, there's 75 milligrams of red meat, and people are eating red meat, and you're just like, what the hell is this about?
75 milligrams?
What is this about? The daily consumption, 75 milligrams. You're like, wait a minute.
I
Watched
that committee because it is a very important document, the Cass report.
Yes, of course.
It's like a serious issue. But I was watching that committee, and when she was talking, they went to Dr. Hilary Cass, and they looked at her face, and she was just dumbfounded of what is this woman talking about.
She probably hasn't seen her before, so we know what to expect.
Yeah.
We're still shocked when it happens, but we know what to expect.
It's quite absolutely quite incredible. But what she was doing her damnedest to try and make out the report was dubious science, and it was not peer reviewed, and all this. But she got herself in such a tangled mess.
She doesn't know what dubious science means.
Yeah. And at the end of it,
go ahead, Mark.
At the end of it, it was just well, what is your question? And they went back to Emma Harper, and she just stood there and looked as if to say, well, actually, I've not even asked a question.
I haven't got to.
Gambling again. She started talking about dubious nights again. It was just...
I saw it. Yeah.
Yeah, it was just... I thought it was... but the serious point is, that is a very serious report that needs scrutiny, and the people that wanted to ask serious questions were not allowed to.
Yes,
and that shows you the committee system is not fit for purpose.
Well, it certainly is, and I mean, it's a wider argument. I mean, the Scottish Parliament is not fit for purpose if it allows people of her calibre to have positions. Now, there are politicians in the Westminster Parliament as well who are, let's say, intellectually challenged also, but it just seems there was an inordinate amount of them in this particular Parliament. Good choice there, Mark. Emma Harper is a worthy contender, but of course now it's Mary's turn, and God knows how we're going to fare against what she's got. So, all right, hold on for a second. We'll have you in.
Well, to be honest, I think both of you guys have got really good Zoomers this week. Mine was just something that I saw and I found it a little bit outrageous, to be honest. So my Zoomer of the week this week is South Lanarkshire Council, which is where we live. And the reason I'm proposing them this week is because elderly care home residents who pay for their accommodation at the council-run facilities in South Lanarkshire have had their fees doubled virtually overnight.
Okay.
The South Lanarkshire Council, we know, have a £19.5 million black hole in their social care budget, and there are 5 care homes operated by South Lanarkshire Council. So what they're basically trying to do is to get more money out of the care home residents. So relatives have said that they were stunned to discover that the weekly charges would be hiked from less than £600 a week to over £1,200 a week. And it was done virtually overnight on a bank holiday weekend.
How much? So is that every day of the week?
What are you talking about? It's 1,200 a week, so it would be about 4,800 a month.
Sorry, that's what I meant.
Yeah, so they're paying for every day of the week. So the one man, he has an 82-year-old mother who has advanced dementia, and she'd been a resident in the South Lanarkshire Council care home for about 7 years. He said there was no advance warning from the council, no consultation whatsoever. He said, we received a letter out of the blue on the Saturday of the Easter weekend, and it stated that the bank direct debit was going to be charged on April 9. He said there was no time to do anything about it. And of course, you couldn't get hold of anyone at the council because it was a bank holiday weekend. And there's been no apology, there's been no communication or explanation or anything from South Lanarkshire Council to try and explain to people. And people were really fraught because, the money had to be in the bank account and taken out of the bank account at the right time. And they were really, really worried. So his mother had been paying about £577 a week. So you'd be expecting maybe like a 4 to 5% increase. But it more than doubled to £1,200 a week with no
£4,800
a month.
A month. It'd be cheaper going on a cruise.
Yes, put her on a boat.
Yeah.
Send her off. And she'll probably have a much better time. She'll be better fed as well on the buffets.
Right.
So basically, the way it works is, I was quite fascinated to find this. Care home residents in Scotland with savings or property or investments in excess of £35,000 have to pay the full costs of their care home place. But if you've got less than £21,500, then it's covered by the local authority. So, for example, if you've got someone like his old mum, maybe she owns a house, maybe it's worth a few £100,000.
Right.
They basically keep taking the money off you until her money gets down to 20,000.
It's an inordinate amount of money. I mean, a normal rent. Okay, let's say the rent was £1,000 a month, right? Just say, for example, and that's not even for a single person, right? But say that
would be a family.
Then healthcare. How much would that cost on top? But even if you put £1,000, right, for part-time care or £2,000, still not even anywhere near that amount you're saying.
Yeah, you're looking at close to £5,000. So the council have obviously said this is what the cost of actually looking after someone is. But the thing is that the other councils I mean, they're in the same position as South Lanarkshire Council. They get, the Scottish government hasn't given them enough money. They've got black holes to fill. We understand all of that. But don't take it from the most vulnerable people in society. People who, like the mother can't even defend herself, right?
No, it's terrible.
I mean, it's the families that, they just see that the mother's, money is just being depleted rapidly.
No, it's terrible.
And there's nothing really that they can do about it.
That's a tough one.
For that reason, I think that it has been managed very badly by South Lanarkshire Council, and that's why they're my Zoomers of the week.
Oh, right. Okay. All right. I'm not sure that's Zoomerish. I think it should probably just been a news item, to be honest. But I'm not the person who decides. In this case, we have Mark Z is going to decide who's the Zoomer of the week. So
I'm sorry, Mark, but I can't go with yours because I've been told you've won 3 in a row. And
oh, yes, that's right. That's right.
And Mary says it'd be really difficult to live with if you won 4 in a row. So
that's what I do. I wake up in the morning, I'm like 3 in a row, 3 in a row.
Yeah, so I'm sorry.
You see the size of his head,
Yeah.
Bigger.
Okay. I'll have to stop your run. So
right.
Sorry, you're out. Mary, I think it's quite shocking. Your Zoomer, I really do. But
it's not as Zoomerish as Emma, is it?
I'm gonna have to give it to myself and give it to Emma.
Yes.
Yeah,
well,
I think you're right there,
fine.
Mark.
And I think she did the two in 1 week as well. Plus, there's been a few we've missed out actually, even though she's been a Zoomer and she did another Scots thing, right? And I thought it was the old one. I didn't realise she'd actually done another Scottish.
She's always at it.
Scots nonsense.
Right, okay. She's always doing it.
Yeah. Anyway, we should make a special hits
a lifetime achievement award.
Oh yes, that is it. Right, very good. Well, what are they then win there for Mark
and
Mark. For
Mark.
Emma Harper? The gift that keeps giving. Okay, we are so happy to have you on the show with us every Wednesday night. We apologise for the earlier issue with the glitch in the stream. No idea how that happened. We hope it won't happen next week. Every week we're in a new place. We should get things a bit more stable. Anyway, but glad to have you with us anyway. Thank you all for all your comments. We will be back again, same time next week, 7 p.m. And it says here, my thought for the week is 3 dots because I didn't put anything in. But let's just say...
let's let people ponder on the state of Scottish politics.
Well, I mean, if Swinney the answer to any question anyone has ever asked, I think that's what it is. No one can see him leading anything to... I mean, Hamza Yousaf, there might have been a faint glimmer of hope that he could possibly have led Scotland to independence. This guy has got no hope at all of that. So anyway, thank you for all your support. We will see you next week. Take care and thanks.
Thanks for all the comments, everyone. Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.